Join us today as we talk a little bit about, I guess, comparing and contrasting science fiction and fantasy. Welcome back, those who've been here before. Welcome those who are new to the channel. There's Bobby, it's the Deep Ball channel. There's normally two other gentlemen who are on the channel.
I kicked him out. No.
It's normally Brad and or Chad. Our schedules haven't been lining up lately though, so some solo content. However, today Sarah is also with me, so get a perspective and an actual discussion out of the deal. So here we go. Science fiction and fantasy. Which is preferable? For what reasons? Why?
So
They're both cool, but they both suck.
They're both cool. And I have different genres of each that I love.
That's one question answered.
So when it comes to sci-fi, I'm probably more of a sci-fi horror fan.
Okay.
As opposed to sci-fi like Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that.
Let me stop you right there.
What, you don't think they're sci-fi?
Star Wars is not.
Okay, so that's probably more fantasy, right?
Star Wars is...
It's an epic.
Star Wars is science fantasy. It has the trappings of science fiction.
Yeah.
But the storyline is clearly a fantasy story. And there's not even a pretext given to scientific principles.
Yeah.
Everything works because George Lucas...
Space magic!
Yeah, everything works because George Lucas says it does, not because some scientific principle might be able to be stretched.
Right.
And again, like you just said, space magic. So...
Alright, fine. But I do, instead of like a storytelling sci-fi, I like a horror storytelling.
Okay. One other slight distinction, however, I just want to clear that up.
Splitting all the hairs.
I know, it's one of those things. But, broadly speaking, everyone lumps it into sci-fi, so what can you do?
Yeah.
Okay, but...
Well, evidently we're not allowed to broadly speak here. So, specifically speaking...
This is specific speaking theater here. Kind of like Masterpiece Theater, but we're not funded by the BBC.
No.
Or we're also not.
Although if they'll make me some tea, I'll be down.
Well.
Anyway, so, and I'm a creature feature person at that. I want like science fiction critters that are wreaking havoc and doing stuff. And then in fantasy, I just want a good story that's going to loop me in, that takes me far enough away from my reality with enough relatable trappings of my reality to keep me not trying to figure out how that would work the whole time.
Alright, so would you consider Lord of the Rings a good example of that?
It's high fantasy. It's a little further.
We'll get to that discussion in a moment. That's what we should actually have this video. So, what would you consider a good example then?
Something like... God, it is hard to nail these things down. Like the Shannara stuff is definitely fantasy. It's like futuristic, you know. What would happen if you add a little magic to the world, spice it up a little bit. And of course you're way past the age of this modern man. We've gone through another reset. So you're kind of living in the shell of our modern world, which is what I found really interesting about watching it. Was, you'd see snippets of places like, because it's set in the American landscape. But it's not that anymore, obviously. And you have a little bit of magic sprinkled in, but it's not like space magic, it's not quite, I do this, there's specific ways to channel the energy or whatever. So it's enough that it's alright, It's confinable. They put it in a box enough that you can, like, all right, I can suspend my reality that far, kind of thing. Other kinds of fantasy, like, I like the Iron Druid Chronicles are fantasy. It's a little bit of kind of like druid type magic that has to do with connection to the earth, mixed with the spice of religions and religious figures only being real because people manifest them in their beliefs. So a little bit of explaining our world with obviously some supercilious trappings that make it both entertaining and plausible-ish.
Sounds kind of like American Gods.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah, I read American Gods. I actually listened to it on audio tape.
Now, do they have the same deal where it's not just that you manifest
You manifest a specific type of God.
Okay, but I mean, what I was going to get at is like minor spoilers for American Gods here, folks. Spoilers for
Iron Druid.
Actually, spoilers for the very end of the book, where it was a case of the main character is essentially Baldur, but obviously he's not, because he's an American. His dad is Odin, but he's not the Odin.
So,
and at the end of the book, after the one he's used to is taken out, he's in Europe, and the other one, the Prime, shows up, and it's literally like, he is me, but I am not him. So is it a case of that similar thing?
Kind of, like there are multiple Jesuses, there are multiple different, and it's different iterations that different large cultural groups would believe in.
Okay.
And then, like, when you die, you would go to that place because you believe that
So there are multiple manifestations of the same God.
Yes, multiples for different cultural understandings of. But I mean, it's very clear you have to have a large group of people that believe on a central idea.
Yeah, not just some Yahoo on YouTube spouting stuff all of a sudden manifest the deity.
We could try. That'd be fun. Anyway.
Well, they're big enough following it. Like Mr. Beast might be pulled off.
But yeah, so I consider those things like fantasy. I just want to be removed enough from this world that I'm entertained, but connected enough that I'm not the entire time trying to figure out mechanics in my head.
All right.
And the same thing with sci-fi. I think that also gets into the at least spout off enough scientific gobbledygook at me that I get lost enough I'll believe it. Like, and I know that sounds awful, but that is the truth.
Invert the deflector dish. We can fire the polarization ray at the anomaly.
Exactly.
And somehow that will save the universe.
Exactly. I'm like, push the button. Like, that's the thing. Old Man's War is very much a science fiction I can get behind all day. Love it. Because he goes in depth enough to, if this world isn't plausible to ours, he at least makes his own world and explains it enough to you in an interesting enough way.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't spend 50 pages just explaining stuff, but as you go through, there are lots of places where it's just a paragraph of an explanation. And then there's more action and more things that are happening, or more character or plot development. And then you have another explanation as to why this is this way. I really appreciate those kinds of things. I guess I just don't want... I'm not looking for absolute off-the-wall crazy. I want to be drawn in. But I also am not a big fan of real reality TV. Like, I don't watch TV to watch the news. If I watch the news, I'll watch the news. I watch TV to be entertained and to let my brain either either think about the big topics in a way that is more amusing, like something like Don't Look Up, because I'm still entertained.
It's amusing.
I know, but I mean, like, I'm still entertained, but I'm also made to think.
Yeah. Unlike most of the characters in the movie.
Yeah. I don't know. I want a little bit of intellectual stuff. So, what are your opinions on sci-fi versus fantasy?
Before we jump to that, I want to ask you something.
Okay.
You said you don't like the off-the-wall crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you mean just completely, or...
You can lead me into crazy.
I was going to say,
but
are you okay?
Start off there.
Are you okay with building towards it?
Yes. Because then you've created the world for me. And you've made a world where that's plausible. But I just can't take the leap right off the bat. I need to be drawn into it. I need to have a little bit of explanation here and there. There are some things that are just like universal. I'm a huge anything dragon fan. It's been that way since I was a kid. So I've read, I don't know how much about dragon lore from around the world in all the cultures I could get my hands on information about what their mythos are about them, including like where they may have come from and how they thought they saw this, or how like sea serpents were probably just whale male appendages waving around and stuff like that. Just more information, the more you know, right?
Yeah.
But so I can be led into crazy because like I can see where, something could lead into this and make you believe that if you're super tired and you've got scurvy and you're freaking out on deck forever, you're like, what the heck is that flopping around in me? Things could happen, I can be led into crazy. I just can't take the big leap. Don't walk me off the plank there.
So, I guess for me, like, the big example of that done properly is the MCU.
Yeah, because they have built up the world where all this is plausible.
Yeah, and like for me, there was a very specific moment where I was like, yeah, they're going all in, and that was in the first Avengers movie. Because up to that point, you had Iron Man.
And Thor.
Okay, and Iron Man was like, all right, now we all know he would just turn to jelly flying around that thing, but let's grant that for a moment. The rest of this all mostly makes sense. You have Captain America.
And
so he's super soldier, but the rest of this is really just World War II.
Well, and a lot of I think Iron Man, and some of it is we've got stories in the American pop culture background that lend themselves to people being in suits, that lend themselves to people being modified to be better soldiers, to be like we've had these stories. The comics are not new, so if you can just tweak it and bring it up to date, you can pull more people in.
Right. So you got that. You got the Hulk. Okay, it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde essentially. Then you had Iron Man 2. Now Thor was the one where, like, as soon as I saw Asgard, and that was one of the ones where, like, I guess we're going all in on this one. Like, this is just straight up space magic. There's not a hell of a lot that makes this make sense. But
we're gonna make the bridge. Do it.
Like we've seen the other things, and they're like, just trust us on this, guys.
Yeah.
But it was actually, for me, it was in the Avengers movie, and it was the helicarrier.
Oh yeah.
Because I knew about it from the comics. So when they're on the carrier, I was like, all right, well, it's just gonna be an aircraft carrier, because surely to God they're not really gonna use the helicarrier. And then they're like, oh no, it's not a submarine. I was like, all right, well, I guess they are gonna use the helicarrier.
Yeah.
And then they did, and I was like, this is like the most comic booky thing they could have possibly done in this movie.
But they made it look good.
And it looks good. At this point, it's now plausible. Like, we've got a dude in an iron suit. We got a green guy, a space god, a guy from World War II. Sure, flying helicarrier, why not?
You're gonna pick up a whole city and drop it? Fine.
And then we just kept building from there.
Doctor Strange. Yeah, we can do that.
You know, magic, sure. Guys out in space, why not?
Yeah, no,
8-foot tall purple dude getting magic space rocks to wipe out half the universe? Yeah, it took us like 20 movies for this to make sense, but it does now.
Thanos is the thing. What are you talking about? That's fake, you know? But that's where it is. You gotta get brought in.
Yeah, I think the only problem is, like, I think that's where they peaked.
Garth Nix. Who was it that did the Bell Garth series?
No, no, no.
That is a very good example of that kind of building a world. He made a very long series of things that and it explains it. You start out with a traumatic event, you know, and then you start hearing this girl's story, and you start going through, and she explains how she learned about it, which is how you find out about the world, and how these things work, and how you can travel and do the magic and do the different tasks or take care of things. I think it's you got to build it in. You can't just.
Well, you also mentioned your fascination with dragons.
Yes.
I'm guessing you've probably never seen Babylon 5, right?
No.
Oh, it's okay. It was a TV show.
I know what it is, and like I've seen a couple episodes. I have not watched it from beginning to end.
Okay, well, both you and literally everyone watching this, and everyone you know, and everyone they know, and so on and so on, should watch that show. It is excellent.
Yeah.
Now, ignore that the special effects were made on a 1990s laptop. I can't help you there. But the show
nostalgia for you.
The show will make up for it, trust me. It's like imagine the sweeping epic of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But in space, with generally sci-fi type stuff, in a show that takes the plot is 4 seasons, and there's not a hell of a lot of filler.
Oh, wow.
And like once you see what the real plot is, like all kinds of past episodes, you're like, oh, that's what was going on this entire time.
Wow.
Like if you ever watch it and rewatch it, there's all kinds of conversations that you realize the real context to them. And it's something to behold. Now,
watched Battlestar Galactica.
Now watch season 5 at your own peril. The show was supposed to have 5 seasons. They thought they were going to be canceled, so they condensed it to 4. And then they got a 5th season, so the 5th season's kind of filler. But, so maybe just pretend like it stops at 4 and then watch the movies. But, yeah, it's good. But anyway, the point is, one of the groups are called techno mages. They've like gotten their hands on all kinds of advanced alien
wizardry. I've heard you say
advanced
that
technology
more
and
than
stuff.
once.
Yeah, well, these guys, it's all technology, but they pass it off as magic. Okay, but it's all technology based. It's just they understand it more than anyone else. And so there's an episode where one of them's like holding out against some people, and he literally uses it to conjure a giant fiery dragon. And he's just like, yeah, nothing quite beats a dragon. Like, there's some primal fear of a giant fire-breathing reptile. You just can't get past that.
What do you mean fear? I want to pet it.
Yeah, well, this was one that was going to attack. Like,
yeah, I'd like to be on the other side of the attack dragon. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I'm definitely. Which is why I have a small lizard, because it's as close as I'm allowed to keep in my home.
Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there. That even in the sci-fi realm, like dragons still a thing. Like,
I also think it's interesting. I think fantasy is interesting because a lot of it is built on myth, and like we just innately are so drawn to myths and our how the world came to be kind of stories. Even if, you know, we're in the day and age where we understand what atoms are, and we understand how things are put together and how things are made. We understand weather, and we understand these things now.
So not like in the Army of Darkness, whenever Ash goes back and starts ranting at one of the people, like, get your hands off that. You wouldn't understand it. It's made up of molecules and has a molecular structure and atoms, and you just wouldn't understand. You can tell that he's just trying to be an asshole towards it. So it's hilarious. But
I just kind of think that we as human beings are drawn to how this came to be stories, and our brains want there to be more. And
yeah,
I think like looking in the clouds, looking into things and seeing other things, we're wired that way.
Yeah, we want there to be more than this world. We want there to be bigger things. We want to be part of those bigger things.
We want to be impacted by something more than ourselves and be able to impact.
You know, it's like that's why so many people want there to be life beyond this planet. You know, even though logically we definitely really want to cross our fingers if there is, because, well,
we're at the top end.
If it's more advanced than us, like, the odds are not in our favor.
And or they've already seen us and are like, yeah, leave those people alone.
Yeah.
Ugh. But
just like, the idea that there's something more and myths, you know, kind of feels like that. A little bit more than sci-fi does, I think.
Well, and I think sometimes...
Well, sci-fi, I guess, is more looking towards the future.
Yeah, I was like, it's carrying it forward.
What could be versus what was.
And usually. I think sci-fi is really interesting to look back at, say, the previous generation's sci-fi entertainment.
Yeah.
And be like, so 2022 was last year, and definitely am I not on my hoverboard. Do we have hoverboardy type things? Yes, but not to the extent that these things are. Or, you know, to see where we missed the mark, or how they missed the mark and what they thought was going to happen.
I've got bad news for you. I think it was actually like 2017. I don't think it was 2022.
I was just giving. I know.
I'm just saying, like, but like, I think we're actually like quite a bit past it now. We are past the point that every single moment in Back to the Future is now in the past.
Oh wow!
Like, we are there.
Although I still want the friggin' train that he comes in. Oh my god, that was so cool. I love that. And like, I guess.
I mean, by the end of this decade, I think we'll be to the point that every part of the Terminator is in the past. If I recall correctly, they come from 2029.
Oh wow.
So, Skynet, you got about 8 years, buddy. 7 years. 6 years. What the hell was this? 2023?
Yes, honey. It's
2023. There we go. You got 6 years.
Right. Get on it.
Well,
they're listening.
I'd prefer you didn't, but, like, you know, we're living in enough interesting times. I'd prefer to not have nuclear apocalypse followed by robot apocalypse added to the list.
One I watched the other day that everybody had been saying I should watch, and it's a little bit of sci-fi and a little bit of I would say some fantasy. Altered Carbon. I finally got around to watching Altered Carbon.
I haven't seen season 2, but I saw season 1.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was good. I don't know. What do you put that in?
It's science fiction, in my opinion, because the only real like conceit, aside from it's in the future, so other technologies have advanced, is that they found the thing on an alien planet that allowed them to make the discs.
Yeah.
Beyond that, everything flows as a consequence of that, and I can see roughly where those other consequences would come from.
Yeah.
So, also, thought it kind of interesting. The show didn't shy away from some topics that you know would come up.
I like it when they do that, though, when they're like, no, we have real questions.
But that, like, no one really wants to ask out loud. You're waiting for someone else to be the everyone that's going to look at it like, oh, you're one of those people. When inside, you're like, I was kind of curious about that, too.
Yeah.
And I assume you know what I'm talking about. The clones and multiples being activated, and Well, I guess, I suppose I could mention finding a new definition for self-love.
Yeah.
Like, for the record, folks, if you haven't seen the show, that's explicitly illegal in the show. So, yeah, but just in general, since it involved, since the ability existed to copy the disc, you know, at some point they had to deal with the reality of, well, someone's going to make a copy of themselves intentionally.
Yeah.
So,
Altered Carbon was good. I would almost call it some fantasy, but it's because of those alien kind of things that I would almost lump it into that. Because alien and godlike kind of blur for me.
well, I'm willing to put it in science fiction if it's like a thing. It's like, okay, we found this thing, but let's say we had this thing, then what? You know, because as long as that thing isn't literally magic, you know, then it's like, well, okay, you found a magic wand on an alien planet, now we're back to fantasy.
But so many...
Sci-fi got you there, but fantasy's going the rest of the way.
Right. I guess I've watched a lot of shows that kind of like... I've been on a kick of watching a lot of dubbed Netflix. Okay? We're talking like...
Oh, I've seen plenty
bunch.
I've seen quite a few Korean zombie flicks and shows. There's like a whole subgenre there. You folks are missing out if you haven't seen them.
I've been watching a lot of period dramas. But then I've also been watching a lot of like their version of witchcrafty type things.
Yeah.
Right? And some of it is pretty interesting in that they're really just looking at like herbalism, like using herbal remedies and potions and stuff like that that are actually like stuff you could make, because in some of them they're like, love potions aren't real. I mean, I can lower your inhibitions enough that you'll anything, but you know, that's not a love potion, that's just ramping up your sex drive. You know, or, you know, talking about, you know, some of these things just don't exist.
From the ads I've seen on YouTube, they make chocolate for that now.
Some of those ads are getting really crazy.
Yeah, that one is kind of crazy, actually. The one in particular, where the guy's walking through an adult novelty store. I think he's even holding a bullwhip while he's like holding up the chocolate. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think the chocolate's gonna.
Well,
like,
here we are today.
Like, I don't. If they weren't already into the other, I don't think the chocolate's gonna help that one. I could be wrong, but.
So many things to say. I think I'll show you.
And then there's like other things he's picking up. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're on like stage like 3 or 4 of things. Like, the chocolates to get you past like stage 1. You're jumping ahead. Like, you're almost into orbit. You're shedding the booster rockets already. Like,
I have so many mental images.
Well,
you gotta stop. You gotta stop. You got to stop right there. Anyway, so moving on from that, I think it's really interesting in some of these more European and from different cultural backgrounds, and how they understand and how they tell stories about.
I have some recommendations for you then.
Okay, well, sure. So let me finish my thought.
Okay.
Because I'm processing. They're kind of harnessing technology earlier than everyone else, which is how they're getting to witchcraft. And in this particular one, I don't remember which one it is. I'm so sorry, guys. I've watched way too many. They actually get into some magic by accident. But really, it's just like electricity.
Yeah.
And they don't understand how they're controlling it. They just know that they are.
Okay.
And that was really interesting to see that being called magic, when really it was just setting up an electrical pulse and a current and being able to stop it, ground it, carry it forward, things like that. And that was interesting to see that as witchcraft, like full-fledged called witchcraft. And then you start thinking, well, maybe that is a little more closer to how people started saying people had witchcraft. Like, because people who had cats during the Black Plague didn't have as high a chance of getting the plague. So they were considered witches and their black cats were awful. Well, not really. It's just the cats ate the rats, or at least they didn't come in the home as much, so you had less chance to get sick.
Yeah.
Little things like that, things we take for granted, or not knowing how something really works, just knowing that it's consistent and it does work every time. I guess that's how we learned how to use herbs and learn how to use, but the show was all about electricity and like gaining access to how to use it, and there was a water wheel involved. It was pretty cool.
I know one of the things generally speaking, I prefer ones that commit to it.
Oh, you want to just go?
What I mean is, like, I don't want a movie that's like wishy-washy, or a book that's like, well, magic's just science we don't understand. Like, no. Like, that's fine as long as the story's good. I want one that's like, no, this is like pacts with elder gods, and like, no, this is like harnessing the forces of the universe because I know how to move my hands right and say magic words. There's no pretext of like, oh, this is really just physics in disguise. Like, no.
I guess
this is harnessing the power of creation to do something, or chaos, or whatever.
The focus of that story was more on how having that knowledge affected how society saw this group of people.
I didn't mean like encounter to what you were saying. I just mean in general, because like this is actually more of a science fiction example, believe it or not. But it's what it commits to is World War Z. I'm lukewarm on the whole movie, but the fact that towards the end they're trying to explain the zombies, like, yeah, they bite you, they give you a virus, but that thing is dead. Like, there's no beating her. They're like, no, that's the zombie bite. Like, no, it's a corpse that's animated through means we don't understand. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a zombie. It's not. I've mentioned this before. Ghoul's actually the correct term there, but we're not going to go down that road. They're like, no, we can't explain medically what the hell's going on. Like, the virus isn't reanimating it. It's dead. It has no life signs, no functions, but it is animated and it wants to eat you. And it's like, yes, finally, like, commit to it. It's a zombie.
Just go with it.
This is why people say, I've seen people say with a straight face, that voodoo zombies are more logically sound. Yeah. Because at the very least, like, well, it's magic, of course, Yeah. And by that they mean the magic voodoo zombies, not Haitian voodoo zombies, which is really just giving people tetrodotoxin and then convincing them that you brought them back to life and keeping them drugged up and making them your slave. At least that's what the Discovery Channel told me. And this is before they went off the deep end where everything was based on aliens. This is even before it became the World War II channel.
Do you ever watch Ancient Aliens?
Nope.
Oh, the guy with the hair cracks me.
No, I don't watch the guy with the hair who looks like one of the Centauri from Babylon 5.
He's great.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Oh, he cracks my.
And the worst part is, like, I could buy Ancient Aliens, like, sure, It's not like I'm opposed to the concept.
Yeah.
But, like, you're supposed to be, like, at least attempting to educate people in scientific things. And all you're doing is talking about goddamn aliens that you can't prove exist or don't. Like, bring back the shows that actually teach you things.
So,
like, whenever I hate to interrupt, I gotta keep going real quick.
I'm interrupting, that's fine.
Okay, but, like there was a thing one time, it was like a 4-hour special. It's about Megiddo in Israel, okay? And I'm sitting there watching, I was like, oh man, Peter Weller's narrating this. This is awesome. For those of you who don't know, Peter Weller played RoboCop in the original good RoboCop movie. The remake was okay, but the original's better. And I was like, all right, Peter Weller's narrating this. Then I see his, like, Peter Weller, ancient history expert. I'm like, I looked it up, and sure enough, he's got a PhD in, like, ancient history, and I'm like, oh, he's, like, the guy, not the narrator. He's, like, the presenter, the knowledgeable guy. It's like, I'll be damned. well, that's a good enough excuse to not be in as many movies as it should be, I guess. It's like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, on the tangent of kind of ludicrous but really neat shows, I love the series of shows that are if life evolved from X. So fungi and if
I
it's
haven't
like
seen those. That sounds great. That actually sounds very interesting.
they're super cool. And like different planets. So they get Goldilocks zone planets.
Yeah.
And they get their perimeters and they kind of talk about them. And they're like, and if life evolved here, here's how we think it would happen based on, you know, what they would have for oxygen needs, what they would have for any kind of need. You know, like, here's what their atmosphere is consistent of, here's what they have. So this is how the gravity would affect them. This is how all this. And then they, like, show you how life would evolve and how it could.
Yeah.
And those things just blow my mind. They're definitely...
Yeah, but that's
not real, but really cool.
It's not real, but they're at least using what we know of evolution on Earth to be like, okay, what if? And then extrapolate. You know, I consider that worthwhile.
Oh,
you know,
like it doesn't
always have to be like, well, this is what happened at the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, and you know, Rommel and you know, Patton, and you know, it doesn't have to be that.
Because we have oxygen, nitrogen, you know, X amount of water on it. This is how we have evolved.
Yeah.
Because other places have these, this is how they might evolve based upon using the same series or the same template of evolution, just plugging in their numbers, not ours.
Yeah, there was a show, I watched like 3 or 4 episodes of it, this is a whole back-to-back, talking about if we encountered alien species, what are they likely to be like? And then, so they kind of started from they're a spacefaring race and worked backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, what would that take to do that? You know,
where did they start out?
Yeah, and so like it was interesting. You know, obviously, you know, it's discussion theoretical, but like the amount of stuff they were able to rule out really quickly and logically is pretty interesting. So they're like, well, they don't live underwater. Like straight up, it can't happen because you can't do metallurgy underwater, which means you can't build a spaceship. So, you know, they can be more intelligent than us, but they ain't leaving their planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we can just rule out, like, you know, octopus people and things like that. You know, like, more than likely.
I love the theory that octopuses came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
And they narrowed it down, and obviously, this is self-referential, but it came down to, like, they're actually probably very likely to look a lot like us. Highly likely to be mammalian or whatever their equivalent is, and they're going through the reasons, you know, because they're like, you know, reptiles are too aggressive and you know this kind of thing, like, but they have to be somewhat aggressive because that's how they became the top of the food chain. But they have to be able to work in groups. That's how we became intelligent, and you know, so that was just interesting going through to ultimately arrive at they'd actually probably be a lot like us.
Yeah.
And for better or worse.
Well, in the series I was talking about, they actually walk through the different stages of evolution. And okay, fast forward a million years, fast forward this far, and the different stages. It's just those were interesting.
Now, to me, the other fascinating part was because that was like one episode, but then was like psychologically, what would they be like? And they were like, well, maybe they'll be smarter than us, but maybe not. Maybe they have some equivalent to the internet, and their intelligence is geared more towards knowing how to use that effectively to find out what they need to know.
People know how to use Google.
Essentially, that's what he was like. You know, he's like, you know, because think about it. If you have that at your fingertips, the evolutionary pressure to know that yourself doesn't exist anymore. It's right there. There now the pressure is how to get to it more effectively. You know, he's like, collectively they'd be smarter because it's spacefaring technology, but individually they could in fact be dumber than us.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know, I never even considered that possibility before. Then I'm kind of looking around like, maybe. You know? When I see people like, I don't need to know how to do math, I have a calculator. I'm like, you know, you could use the calculator more effectively if you know how to do math. so you know what to punch into the calculator. It's like, yeah, have it do the number crunching part, because it can do it way faster than you can. But you need to know what you're telling it to do and roughly what you're expecting. You do, in fact, still need to know how to do math. It's like, so ChatGPT.
We digress.
So yeah, that's kind of like ChatGPT writing your paper. You know, it's. I'm actually not opposed to having it write a paper, as long as you know what you're telling it with the prompts and everything, and then you go in and make it yours. You know, as long as you do know what you're talking about. You know, don't just
you polish it.
You know, I think that's that's obviously where things are heading. So you may as well learn that skill. Like, I had a digression here. Had a professor for one of my coding classes told us point blank, I don't care if you use things we're not covering in this class, but you better know how they actually work. You know, he's like, I'm not going to limit you, but you need to take the time to learn how those things work, because this is how it works in the real world for coding. You don't have a teacher over your shoulder. You're going to go to the internet. Here's my problem. Tell me how to fix it. You're going to take someone else's solution because someone's already solved the problem. And then you're going to have to know how to plug it in. He's like, that's how it actually works in the real world, so you may as well learn that here because that's an actual skill. And I was just like, you know, we need to clone this man, have him teach every other class, and a class on like how to balance your checkbook and rewire your house and change your oil, you know, things you could actually use in the real world. You know, not...
So what was our main topic?
Talking about aliens, so they might be dumber than us. Sci-fi versus fantasy. We've seriously drifted, but that's fine. That's what these good folks are here for, I think. Maybe. I hope so.
Hope. It is a sincere hope.
So to very quickly answer your question from like 20 minutes ago, for me...
now you're going to say what you think the difference is?
Like, no, we've covered the differences. Science fiction, fantasy, I like them both, but for different reasons. Sci-fi, like, because Chad and I have gotten into this a little bit, like, I don't care for sci-fi RPGs much, because I don't think role-playing games, I think fantasy, it's like the two are like connected mentally for me, because I'm thinking, okay, well, like, you know, your magic's going to increase, this thing's going to increase. For fantasy, or for sci-fi, what's increasing? Your ability to shoot the laser rifle better, your ability to use the transporter better.
I got a bigger battery. I got more oomph.
Yeah, I mean, like...
now I've got to figure out how to pack more oomph with me where I'm going.
Right, so, like, for me, it's a matter of just mentally, I'm just like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing here for... You know, I'm sure there's great ones out there, and I'm going to try them. But, so for sci-fi stories, like Sarah, I've definitely noticed, like, a lot of sci-fi horror, like Alien and Predator, more of the older movies than the newer ones.
And even, like, bad C and D rate sci-fi horror is still amusing to me.
Yeah.
I still like it.
Yeah. Whereas fantasy, it's like something about it, if it's bad, like it can just go off the rails in not good ways. You know, where they try to take themselves ultra seriously, but like the budget's just not there to convey that. So the movie looks silly, and so then it's just like some overproduced high school play or something. You know, like it just goes wrong with fantasy way easier than it does with sci-fi, in my opinion, for that kind of thing. But like for fantasy, you know, I look more for like, I guess the hero's journey essentially.
I want the plot development.
And
I depend more on some plot development in a fantasy story.
And also, I'm not married to things have to be absolute black and white, good and evil, but I can accept it a lot easier in fantasy, you know, where they're like, well, here's the god of evil, like it's a real fundamental force of the universe, like, so of course there's absolute good and evil. Whereas sci-fi, oh man, sci-fi, if it's not shades of gray, then there's a problem. Like, there can be people that are absolute assholes, but like, I at least understand their motivation. Like, I despise Burke from Aliens completely, but I get it.
Get it.
Money.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. You know? So, you know, shades of gray. And then the alien itself is completely, it's not even on the scale. It's an animal. It's amoral.
Yeah.
It's, It's what is it? Its
I don't
structural
know.
perfection is only surpassed by its hostility. I think is what Ash said, something like that.
The gray humanoid one from like late in the series starts to get a little more human-ish.
Oh, the one from Alien Resurrection?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that definitely had like thoughts and emotions all its own. It's like, sorry, Mom. Screw you. Now time to kill other moms.
But that was we had to walk into that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you could watch that one straight from the first one
No.
and be like, oh, okay.
No, you definitely need the first one and maybe even the second one. Also, those movies in particular, wild swing between the first and second one.
Yeah.
The first one's straight up like space cosmic horror.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is Vietnam in space versus aliens. Here we go.
Yeah.
The third one's trying to get back to that first feel, and the fourth one's just like clones. Just live with it. Clones.
I don't know. I enjoy the tie-in with like Prometheus and that track too.
I'm really hoping that somehow someone at Disney's like, let's just give Ridley Scott the money to make his third movie and maybe the fourth movie that's supposed to connect the two sets of movies, and then somewhere down the road we'll reset it. Because I know that's what they want to do, but they can't do it while Ridley Scott's still around. And that's one thing I hate companies doing. They're just like, oh, well, the last one didn't work out for whatever reason, so we're just going to throw everything away and reboot it. And it's like, but we got to wait, even though all the talent is here that could fix it.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, our company's literally going to last forever because it's an immortal legal entity. That person's not going to, so fuck them. And it's just like, no, like, screw you. Like, give Ridley Scott his damn money. Let him finish the movies, damn it. You know, it was going places. Weird, wild places.
Yeah.
I have hope for. Like, bring me more crazy cyborgs. Like, I want to see the other track we're going down with, like, AI is apparently going to screw us over too. You know?
Right? Like, that could get its own business.
You know, give me some more flashbacks with Guy Pearce as Wayland. You know? I love Guy Pearce. Wish he was in more stuff. But, yeah. And yes. And so, you know, that's... So I like them both, but for different reasons. Like Sarah said, definitely like sci-fi horror a lot. And for those of you who have never really figured this out, the Marvel movies are sci-fi movies. Like, even Doctor Strange goes with the whole like it's science by another name, basically. And that's what Thor's going with too. So like Captain America, that's straight up science fiction movie. You know, Iron Man, the Hulk. And once we get into space magic, it's just technology we don't understand, so is Thor. And that's the gamut. You know, then it's his spy stuff thrown in. And then alien stuff, which is by its nature science fiction. So, until we come across aliens that have magic. See, that's the book I want to see. Aliens invade via magic portals. And we're just like, what the hell is this?
I'm sure we can find that.
Yeah, they probably just call them demons, but, you know. But you know what I'm saying? Like advanced alien race, but it's magically advanced, not science fiction, not science advanced.
I watched something that was like alternate dimensions were actually different worlds. Oh, like different planets.
Yeah.
That lined up across the galaxy. They had to line up like it was in line with yours.
Huh.
And that's the only time you could jump to them.
That'd be interesting.
Was when they were lined up at, you know, certain portals or whatever, and that was pretty cool.
That'd be interesting. So yeah.
Look up and see where I watched that.
Yeah. So folks, let us know what you've seen, what you would think. Where do you stand on these issues? What do you guys like? Do you like the random few movies I've talked about on here before? You should check those videos out. Or are there other movies? Like, I spend my time watching random old movies on like Amazon Prime and Netflix, like 70s, 80s, and 90s, like sci-fi horror movies, stuff like that. And I've come across some real gems that I haven't done videos on yet. So look forward to those. Or not. but as the case may be. So let us know what you guys think. Always appreciate likes and subscribes. But otherwise, we'll see you folks later.